Hello, everybody. Hey, I just want to give you a reminder. The context of these calls are about setting up a dialogue between staff and committee to figure out solutions together for their ministry context. You know the context of your ministry more than we do. And so we're not about going to give you answers or assume you already can answer the questions we're going to give you. The task after each of these calls is to set up a conversation with the committee and the staff to work towards a solution from the questions we give you. So we hope these are pertinent for you for the time that you're in. We hope that this is going to be helpful. There's people on all these calls. And guess what we're talking about today? Yes, COVID. COVID. We thought back in March we wouldn't be thinking about that right now, but we are thinking about COVID still. Some of your schools have started off all virtual. Some of you are starting off and it seems like everything's going normal. But every area that we're in has restrictions. So we got to be mindful of that, which means what we need to do in our areas is create a new metric to think through as a committee and a staff. What's your new metric that you're going to do? Now, a metric is what you're going to define doing successfully. I put that in quotes, what you're doing as an area to feel like you're moving forward and you're doing things. Now, Young Life is known to go bigger, more kids. Some of that comes from a heart of us that we see kids and we know their stories and we go, there's a ton more kids like this at the schools and we want to meet those kids. And that's from a good place. But in this season, and it might be my cynical side, I'm going to say your metric is not growth. You might have a growth of like 0.1%, or your growth might become just a byproduct of the metric that you decide as a committee and a staff to do for your area. That metric not being growth, because a lot of times people are like, we want 20% more kids at club, we want 10% more kids in campaigners. But the reality check is we have leaders and we have guidelines that we're following, and to think through what's the metric for just this season that we're going to stack hands on, that we can communicate to our volunteer leaders, that we can communicate to our community. And here's the story I'll tell you. I didn't know I was going to be asked a loaded question, but I was talking to a partner of mine, and he asked me, hey, what's Young Life doing right now with COVID? And this is back first part of the summer in May. And I said, oh, and I started telling him stories about what was happening in our region and the cool things that we were doing and what I was doing in ministry myself. And he said, oh, that sounds great. I was like, cool. And he's like, because I just got off the phone a couple of days ago with a guy at a nonprofit that I support. And he said, we're just going to take a break till October. And I looked at him and just said, why am I supporting you if you're not doing anything? So I'm glad to hear Young Life's still doing stuff. But that's off of metric that we have redecided. So it's not about growth, it's about depth, or whatever you want to put that in there. And then communicate that to your committee is helpful. So then when they're in the community, your committee and staff are in the community, they can say, here's what we're doing this semester. Yep. Second thing, here's the one task I'm going to give you to do in the next week or two, is to sit with your staff committee and send out an email to your donors, to your committee people, to your community, to parents, and give them the talking points of what guidelines you're following with COVID. I cannot tell you how many times in the last week I've heard from people say, what's Young Life doing about COVID? And what they're really asking is, how safe are you? Are you following the guidelines or not? One of the staff people, Kyle, was talking about the reality that no matter where you fall on COVID, we have to be mindful of the long-term pieces, not just the short-term. Short-term could say, well, we're just going to not follow the guidelines. We're just going to do whatever. But who that's going to affect the most is our support that we have maybe from administrations at the school and from our community. And those people that are kind of maybe on against us, or maybe like, I don't know if I really like them in the school, could start a loud ruckus about Young Life. And then the admin is kind of like, yeah, we can't support you anymore because you're not supporting us in the schools. So be mindful of that. The short-term outcomes seem like, oh, why don't we just do that? We have leaders that are like, come on, we just do whatever we want. And we go, no, let's think about the big picture here. So as we think about that, we send this out to our donors, our parents, all the people, stating that we're following the guidelines of the schools. We're following the government guidelines for or our areas, not the faith-based organization sub guidelines, but the guidelines for our areas. So we're above reproach. And really, what I'm saying is following that guideline that seems pretty concrete across our whole region, which is 5 people, and it's outside and got masks on, and we're following that as best we can. If it's 10 people, great. But just knowing that we are following those guidelines and share that with people. Don't assume they know the answers. Don't assume they know what Young Life's doing or that Young Life's following the rules, but follow the rules and send it out to people. Now we're talking about leader engagement and how we can support the leaders, support the development, and support all those different pieces. We asked a question that says, how can our staff and committee come together to help engage our volunteers with this new metric that we talk about, that you're going to talk about as an area? And Tanya's taken over for that.
And it's going to need to change. And so a conversation between you and your staff person about how can we come around the leaders to keep them engaged with ministry right now. And of course, that has to do with so many things. Like, do you have college age leaders like they do in North Spokane? Do they have mostly adult leaders with families? Is that what you have in the LC Valley, Becky? Adult leaders with families, maybe? Yeah, okay. So how are you going to support them? You're going to support them differently, I imagine. And being experts in your community, you'll be able to have that conversation. How can staff and committee help to keep volunteers engaged with this new metric so that relationships still happen? And then so that's the kind of continuing relationships things, but also how can committees support staff and leaders to reach out to kids? It is a totally new system to think about, not being able to maybe go into schools. If schools aren't in session, we can't go there to do contact work, but what can we do? And how can leaders support, or how can leaders be supported? One idea that I was thinking about is, if everyone's doing online school, all the students are doing online school, or a majority of it's online, could committees come around leaders and maybe help them put on like study sessions by providing snacks or their Wi-Fi or tables and chairs, so that maybe leaders can meet with groups of kids to do online school together? I mean, that's something that a college age leader could do. That's something that an adult leader can do. So what resources as a committee do you have that can kind of think outside the box during this time to do some outreach like that? I don't know if it would be, I don't know, but I guess the next thing is that there's a lot of innovation that's going to need to happen. And I would say, like, what if we're not a victim of COVID? What if we're not always on the defense of COVID? What if we are proactive and are on the offense? Like, we're making moves to really move things ahead. That's a doodle. That's a crazy doodle right there. Thank you, Charlie. But what if we stay on the offense, not just on the defense of COVID, and kind of thinking proactively about what we can do? In some school districts, for example, it might just be that teachers are the only people who get to interact with kids. If kids are doing all online school, teachers get to interact with kids, and Young Life leaders will get to mostly interact with kids they already know. So what if we could get into that space with those teachers? Studies show that just under 50% of teachers either, say faith is important or go to church twice a month. And so what if we partner with those teachers in loving kids and kind of coming into what God is already doing in schools and in classrooms? And so I guess that could be it, thinking ahead, thinking innovatively about who is interacting with kids in their space and how can we come alongside those people. Maybe it's teachers, maybe it's who knows in your community, who could that be? And how can, as a committee, maybe you guys come alongside those people? partners with teachers, maybe partner with other people who are actually hanging out with kids. And I think in COVID, we have the opportunity where time is different, right? Like we spend our time in different ways. So that might be a really fabulous way for staff people or committee people to be spending their time by supporting school staff, praying for them, writing them a quick little note, a quick little postcard saying, I'm thinking about you. And I love that you're loving kids. And I know it's hard for you to teach online because you're not used to it, but there's that. So I'd say, like, getting with your committees, thinking about what kind of innovative things can we do to stay on the offense, not just the defense. And then the last thing I think is just trying new things. And the question you might ask is, what can area directors or Young Life staff and leaders dream about to engage new people into ministry, into relationship? And how can committee walk beside them in these new things? And I think this is the beauty of it. Every community has its unique resources, and every committee offers their unique resources and skills and areas of expertise. But how can you think innovatively about reaching out to kids in the community, maybe in a way you haven't done before? And if each area really could try like one new outreach thing this fall, that would be spectacular. And it could be like crazy dreamy things, you know, like I've heard people talking about getting ice cream trucks and getting people to donate ice cream and getting Young Life leaders to sit with a mask on that ice cream truck and go into different neighborhoods and just meet kids and say hello and not high five them, but maybe air elbow, and give ice cream to kids. But and it might not be ice cream for your community, but what a great conversation. Like, let's dream together and think of something that can meet, where we can meet kids. Maybe it meets a need that's like practical. Maybe it just meets a relational need. But the question would be, how can staff and leaders and committee dream together to come up with some ways to get leaders out in the community to meet kids? Okay, so those are some questions about leader engagement. How can we support leaders as they're doing things differently? How can we connect with kids on their space? Maybe it's teachers, maybe it's school staff, whatever. And what's something innovative we can dream up together and work together on to make it happen? I mean, I know in North Spokane, we have a lot of college age leaders. There's no way they could pool their money to get ice cream, but maybe there's a friend of Young Life that committee knows who could get ice cream and they could pass them out to something, or I don't know, water station for the cross country runners. I'm not sure, something, but those are questions you guys can ask.
Yep. Because really trying nothing is the only wrong answer for this season. Now, for clarity for you committee people on the call and staff, you can give a thumbs up or not. We also have a realization that March, April, innovation levels and thinking and dreaming was really high and really excited. And then, May, June, July hit, and then it became, all right, how are we going to do this? How are we feeling about this? This is hard. And then it goes into now where it's like, now we're going into another season and dreaming and innovating feels a little bit tiring. Would staff on this call agree with that? Thumbs up? Yes, no? There's a sideways thumbs up. There's a thumbs up. Guy would decide to take his thumbs up back. So to reach out to your staff and say like, okay, what if we did a think tank together with leaders and committee and just brainstormed and thought of stuff, and that we wouldn't just be telling our staff afterwards, all right, now you go and do this. Committee, you can get involved in this with them, saying you can go and do this with them. And so just to think that and remind yourself, doing nothing is the only wrong answer. And that all comes back to this metric. What's the metric you're going to use for this fall? What is the metric you as a community are going to go, this is our metric? And that's why we're giving you questions instead of giving you answers, because every area looks different. Every gifting set of the committee and staff looks different. And so for us to go, okay, and ask our staff and ask our volunteer leaders, just how you doing? How you feeling right now? How are you? What's your excitement, exhaustion level, and going from there. So my one question I'm going to throw out there is to ask is what do you think is your first step from here? Anybody?
I'm meeting this the 31st of this month with my committee and leaders to present a plan for a COVID-19 new club style, campaigners style, and we want to the committee want to engage with the leaders so they can buy in on the plan. And according to COVID in our valley is pretty bad, so we're not allowed to be with a lot of people. So we're going to present what we can do with 3 to 5 kids per person, because you can meet only 5 people in a week separate. So if I meet with 5 kids, supposedly I cannot meet with other people, but I can do things under the table. But my goal and our goal is to do 3 to 5 kids only per leader. That way we don't get in trouble, or they say, "Oh, Young Life cost this." So yeah, we have a pretty hard county with this COVID thing, but we already have a plan on what we're going to be doing this next 4, 5, 6 months. But we decided, and we want to present on next the 31st, 5:30 p.m. Some Zoom calls, some personal, and we're going to be meeting with the rest, with all the team and board members.
Thanks, Kyle.
We have our planning day this Sunday, so I think just trying to get everybody excited about doing this together, about being innovative and not just leaving it to the few that usually come up with the ideas. So Tyler and I will talk before that and see what we can do to get everybody excited to be innovative together.
Yeah, and to add on to that, like, we did a movie night a couple of weeks ago, and I think that got the energy started. And now that we got it started, we have momentum. Now we can start having those conversations with the leaders and like, hey, let's do something. We don't have to do old style club, but we have this energy and leaders are on fire right now. So let's keep this going. And so that's where, I'm bringing a couple key leaders into the conversation of what can we do, and let's keep this momentum going.
Chris, what are you thinking your first step is?
We've got our Young Life Leader training in September. I feel that's too far away. Obviously that's when all the leaders are going to be in. I would like for committee. Well, I need to talk to staff, but I want the committee to be in on that with the leaders. Like, they'll all be back from school. That's most of ours are school. So maybe if we just have a game plan on how to present and then have this brainstorming session, because I'm sure they have thousands of ideas, way bit more than committee would have. So I want us to all get together on that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Marcus, Stephanie, first step.
We've been meeting with our teams, and preparing for offering after school activities for kids. Really just around contact work, trying to find things that kids want to do, and really kind of like replacing their after school programs. So, doing things like a photography club every Tuesday or something like that for an hour, or a hiking or mountain biking stuff we can do outside, at least for the first few months. And I've been trying to kind of gauge parents on Facebook and see what their thoughts are on it. And so far it's been really positive. So we're going to limit the number of kids and per leader, and really, tell them that we're going to, stay outside, keep distance, and wear masks at all times, and, limit it to an hour, but just provide something for kids to do with leaders. And really, when they're lacking, in Pullman at least, we are all online. And so we're just going to try to provide some safe social interactions for kids.
Thanks, Marcus. Stephanie or Tanita?
I mean, we've basically just been doing small group discipleship stuff all summer. I think at this point we're kind of polling some of the students that we do have relationships with to try to see, like, do they have ideas? Are there things that they want to do that we can do? And then I think focusing on some leader training this fall. And yeah, I can't say that we have like great, huge, innovative ideas yet.
That's okay.
I'd say there's 3 things. One is I've recommended that people update their leadership agreement. So if someone says yes to being a leader, they know what they're agreeing to in this season, and they have a more specific, like you said, what are our metrics for success? Hold on, buddy, mommy's on the Zoom right now. That there's a metric of like, oh, that's what it means to be a good leader in this season, and that's written down somewhere. Second is, I think there's a lot of pressure to come up with the next big thing in young life, and remembering that sometimes it doesn't take huge amounts of innovation. It could just be like, goodness, if our whole area memorized 10 verses together over the semester, we said every 2 weeks we're going to memorize a verse, then by the end of the semester, it's not a bad thing that the whole area memorized 10 verses together. That means we all read the same scripture together, we all meditated on it together, we're talking about it together. It doesn't sound like a huge innovation because it's not, but it's the discipline of little things over a long period of time build up. And that can remove some stress of coming up with the next big new banquet, fundraiser, leader, explosive, good time fun. Mm-hmm. I said, the third thing is, I think, and this probably is more like step 2, and this is probably not, I think if you have your leaders and everyone knows what's going on, mostly maybe it's helping our committees and adults keep our eyes and ears open for where are we running into kids right now. I told Jan, like, the most random one is that we've run into high school kids who are delivering groceries on Instacart because that's a part-time job that they can do. Some sports teams are unofficially practicing with their captains, or they're scooping ice cream at Baskin Robbins. And I think it's learning the discipline of going, okay, every day, everyone this week, write down every time you run into a high school kid. I just took my kid to a weird sports clinic week for 5-year-olds, and there's a high school kid helping out there. Oh, I should remember that high school kid. So that would be my next steps.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to mention, like, Stephanie's idea of really focusing in on leadership development, like, that's it. Like, because if your metric is that we are developing leaders, we're going to work on developing leaders, then that's what you're doing. So then the committee shifts. They're no longer buying club supplies, right? Because there's no club. But instead of not being engaged, they could totally be engaged in leadership development. Maybe they're meeting with leaders, or maybe they're dropping off meals at leaders' homes, or maybe they are buying coffee for leaders, or maybe, I don't know, Starbucks cards. I don't know, but just what are they doing? What can be done to work with that new metric? And so, and like, to me, like people said, like, it doesn't have to be some crazy, it could be like, hey, we're getting pencils that say you are loved or something. I don't know. And we're delivering those maybe, I don't know, but it really could be anything. And I think we limit ourselves by thinking our ideas are too small, or that it's not Young Life or whatever. But I think, man, if it's relationships and if it's about Jesus and relationships with kids, it's pretty good. Relationships with leaders, relationships with committee, like, anyway. So thanks for bringing that, because I think it can be such a great time to do leadership development. Stephanie, thanks for saying that.
Yep. So here's what I'm going to leave you with. Just think of your next step, sending out a task of sending out to your community, not assuming that they know that you're going to follow the guidelines, but letting them know that by email, by posts, that your community and your committee and staff know what you're doing. And then think of that new metric that you're going to be doing this fall. And like Tania said, like Tanya just said, it doesn't have to be crazy big innovation. It's not the next big thing. It's just saying, what little things can you do? If you know that a bunch of kids work at McDonald's and they're teenagers, you might as well go through the drive-through every day and get dollar drinks and deliver them to other people just so you can talk to those high school kids. And then they're like, why are you here every day getting two drinks? And it's like, well, I'm dropping it off to people because of Young Life. Oh, what's Young Life? Now you've just started a conversation with a bunch of high school kids that work at McDonald's. And if you go to the one in Pullman, it might be Marcus's son, who's the, trainer there. And he's engaging with a bunch of high school kids, as he's not in high school anymore. So just think about that. And as you think about leader agreements, as you think about that, it all comes back to this metric piece. Engage your committee, engage your leaders into something new, and be okay with it, and be good with like whatever that looks like, because doing nothing is the only thing that we're going to say is wrong. So do you all have any questions, comments, thoughts rolling around for us? All right. Well, these things are going to be happening monthly. Tentatively, the next one is set for September 23rd. And to let you also know, there'll be a survey that'll come to you tomorrow. Some people love surveys. Some people hate them. We ask you to be honest with us. As you get to know me and Tanya more, we are totally good with, we want to ask the question, how can we best serve you and be helpful to you? So if you have questions or comments or thoughts, or you need some brainstorming, feel free to call me or Tanya. Tanita is also a supervisor that's on this call. Call us and just say, hey, I'm stuck. I'm Mr. Stuck to start with, but that's just my last name. So, but if you're stuck, just give me a call, and I'm happy to chat with you. Tanya as well, and know that this semester is going to look different. Let's transform that word, and this is going to be cheesy, but that's what I'm going to leave with. Let's transform that word to this is going to be hard, or this is going to be a hard season. So this is going to be an opportunity, and this is going to be an opportunity season. If we just change our mindset to think that, then we know there's opportunities ahead, rather than this is too hard and I can't. It turns into, here's an opportunity, and what's the opportunity actually look like?